This is gonna be fun.
The episode begins with a flashback to Jean falling into Wumbo World. After he lands, he finds a tree with clocks as fruits. After picking one, time begins to go backwards, and I'm sorry, just fucking stop. A time tree. A fucking time tree. Really? Of all the ways you could have aged Jean, it's not that it can't work, but you have Jean, who should know better than to tamper with strange magical bullshit, walk up to a time tree and pick a clock because it looks weird, I guess. If he had no exposure to magical or any mystical themes beforehand, then I could see how curiosity might get the better of intelligence. However, Jean knows about and has seen magical bullshit before and has been presented as having at least an IQ in the double-digit region. Jean, as he currently is, would not walk up to a tree that poops out clocks and then pick said clocks. And before anyone tries to twist this, no, I'm not saying that Jean should or would know if the time tree would send him back in time, but that he should know better than to fuck with weird mystical bullshit alone at the very least. On the plus side, the scene where Jean hugs the Moronics is very nice. He is one of the very select few characters that hasn't been completely obliterated, despite being wasted like everyone else. However, the scene where Weiss pervs out is very strange. Here is someone who has clearly been through a lot, and her next thought after an emotional reconnection is, "Damn, he fine as fuck!" It's not a huge issue, but still weird. A bigger head scratcher is this.
How did you find us?
How are you the Rusted Knight? And when did you get so
mature?
I thought the flashback in the beginning was Jean telling you all what happened to him. That's how it was presented anyways. Or the Moronics are really just that stupid. Jean tells them what happened to the relics and, well, let's just say I have a few things to say.
We risked their home to save the relic, and we failed.
Getting everyone out has to count for something.
Yes, Blake, saving people does count for something. But dumping them in a kingdom that canonically cannot sustain them is fucking abysmal. It requires you not knowing the history of your own fucking world.
What good is saving anybody if Salem just destroys the world anyway?
Correct, Ruby. The world is fucking doomed at this point, now that the largest and so far only military is fucking gone. Even if Salem can't get the beacon relic, there's not too much stopping her from at least taking over a good portion of the world. Well, aside from her own lack of intelligence. Still, that is a great point.
That's how Ironwood thought. You don't mean that.
First off, keep my boy's name out ya fucking mouth. Second, it's still a fact, Yang. Salem is closer to destroying the world now that she has the two relics. All those people starving in squalor as they litter the streets of Vacuo are going to die if Salem gets what she wants. The way you sound right now makes it seem like you want your sister to reject this fact. Why don't you want her to accept reality, Yang?
Are you done? We need to move before the weather turns, or it's going to take us a lot longer to get to safety.
No. Don't you fucking pull us away from this very important conversation. Oh, of course they don't finish the conversation, because that might get in the way of something we'll talk about later. And apparently, Sonichu is not what he appears, and Jean really doesn't like him. Like, at all.
Oh, John!
Then they all stand there, despite Jean making it apparent that the approaching storm is a concern. And instead of telling them what happens, they just stand around like gomless toads until the storm hits them. However, instead of lightning and rain, this storm hits you with the manifestations of a mental or emotional problem. Again, this information would have been very useful to know beforehand, Jean. Jean, Ruby, and Weiss are stuck in a literal crossroads, but Blake and Yang are in their own problem. And oh boy, am I dying to dig into that fresh meat.
I just don't get how the story is both real and not.
When Alex wrote the story, she left out details. It's not that hard of a concept to understand, Ruby, you dumbass. But let's be honest, you guys aren't here for me commenting on the shit with Sonichu and Alex being a secret mega cunt who fed her brother to the tree. No, you came to see the butcher go to work. And who am I to keep you all waiting? In order for Blake and Yang to make it to the center platform, they need to say things to each other they haven't said before, until they finally profess their love for each other and kiss. The build-up to this moment is some of the worst I've seen in any romance. You barely had anything to build a strong friendship between them. Sure, you had burning the candle and the moment at the dance, but what else? Blake being concerned Yang was disarmed by her psychotic ex? That should be a default human reaction. After that, it's a season of them not interacting. Blake's main concern in Volume 4 was her friend's safety as a whole, and Yang never thinks about Blake in any significant way. Yeah, in Volume 5, Yang was pissy at Blake, more on that in a moment, but there's really nothing besides that until the end. When it was made pretty clear that Bumblefuck was the direction, it came at the expense of meaningful relationships with other characters and them as individuals. Aside from the collective goal of stopping Salem, Yang and Blake had nothing besides being a ship. Yang already settled the shit with her mom, which wouldn't be an issue if the writers bothered to give her something else. Blake was more than willing to leave the rebuilding of the White Fang to her dad. Her entire story revolved around furry rights, which was dropped for this shit. And all that shit that they haven't said before was weak as fuck. Most of it was shit friends would say to each other outside of maybe the cute cat ears part. Yang and Ruby's relationship as siblings was hit the hardest by the pandering. Blake's reaction to Yang's possible death last season should be the one Ruby has, but instead she stands there like a mushroom. That's your sister, you cunt. She could very possibly be dead. In Volume 5, Yang is mad at Blake for leaving but not Ruby. This was when Yang had abandonment issues, mind you. So why is it she's not upset with Ruby at all? Her sister that she's known all her life leaving her at her lowest point. Wouldn't Yang be even more upset with Ruby? Then there's this moment in the last season.
Do you think she thinks less of me for not helping out with Amity?
Ruby is your sister. She's always going to love you, even if you disagree with each other.
Yeah. Ruby.
Yang being more concerned about what Blake thinks of her rather than her sister whom she loves. Or in this season where Ruby is visibly depressed and Yang seemingly doesn't care or care very much. Where she, according to Yang, starts sounding like James and Yang shows little if any concern about it. It's not one of the things she tells Blake during their bridge to the gay. That she feels like a bad sister because she always hangs out with Blake and feels as if she can't help Ruby because of it. Or how Blake is happier to see Yang alive than Yang is to see her sister alive. However, I'd argue the worst bit in this episode anyways, is how we're dragged away from the very important conversation of the consequences of Atlas's fall for this. It's fucking hilarious, really. That rather than have this important discussion of the displacement of an entire population onto a kingdom that cannot support it, the destruction of and folding of the strongest military on the planet, Salem being closer to her goal than she ever has before, none of these things cross their fucking mind in any significant way. Not a single one. They are more concerned with how they feel about each other than any of these pretty heavy subjects. It's fucking embarrassing. The degeneration of two relatively decent characters into nothing more than superficial key jingling, ignoring any established relationships or not even bothered to forming new ones or strengthen existing ones. That's both the saddest and funniest thing about this horrible pairing. And assuming that this whole thing was planned from the beginning makes it even worse. You guys had damn near a decade to smooth this shit out, and you failed miserably for all the reasons I've laid out, and probably more that I failed to mention. But the execution doesn't matter for a sizable portion of the fanbase. The ever-jingling keys or the most superficial pairing bullshit will keep them satisfied while the show they say they love continues to stew in its own mediocrity. So to summarize, Blake and Yang have little if any substance to their relationship, Bumblefuck has had detrimental effects on relationships with other characters, and prevents more important things from being discussed. It's embarrassing. And the funniest thing is how many people ate this shit up, and making me laugh my ass off in the process. That felt fantastic. I've been waiting for this moment for years, and it was every bit as delightful as I thought it would be. Anyways, they all get out of the mumbo storm, and John says this.
Feels like I've been waiting forever for that.
As much as I agree with the writers with that statement, though not for the reasons they may want me to, your attempts at being meta are cringe, and your punishment is watching every Movie Bob video currently available. And that's pretty much it for the episode. Aside from learning the truth about Alex and Sonichu leaving them, there's not much else to say that goes on after the bumblefuckery. They make it to Jean's village and he gives Ruby back Crescent Rose. I'm sure there are other things to say about this, but I mainly wanted to talk about the retarded time tree, the blatant refusal to talk about the immense consequences of last season, and the Titanic gay that transpired afterwards. So with that, I will leave you and hope you all had as fun of a time as me. I won't be doing any more RWBY content for a while, barring something immensely tismed happens. Like, more than usual. I have other projects I've been neglecting and need to get back to those. I hope you'll enjoy them, and I'll see you all in the next video.